We have indeed a special guest in the studio with us, Starbucks COO Rosalind Brewer. She said I can call her Roz, so I'm going to call her Roz for this interview. She's joined us today to talk about the controversial arrest at the 18th and Spruce Street location and how the multi-billion-dollar company is responding. Good morning to you, Roz, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
So as I understand, right before we were talking, you said the entire C-suite has, or most of it, has come from Seattle to Philadelphia just for this incident.
That's exactly right. First of all, this is a very important time for our company, and this raises quite a few social issues, and we think it's important that we're here addressing it personally.
Yeah. What are the social issues you think it raises?
So, this is a time we're learning a lot through this, and this is a teachable moment for us as a company. We want to learn clearly what happened here. We want to teach from it. We want our stores to be better, and we have a lot to learn.
Yeah. What was your initial reaction and the entire C-suite reaction when they saw the video?
Yeah, so let me just say this one is deeply personal to me.
Okay.
To be an African-American executive, to be a mother of an African-American male that's 23 years old, and enjoys a great cup of coffee on a Saturday morning and a pair of joggers. That's how my son rolls. And so it was very difficult to see, personally heartbreaking for me.
Did your son ask you any questions about this incident?
Absolutely.
If you don't mind, how did you respond?
So he helped me understand that we have a lot to learn here, and we need to answer this quickly and immediately. He was glad to hear that I was taking off immediately to the city, and he encouraged me, as he always does, to do my best work. So.
What's been the conversation that's been had in the C-suite over these last 24 to 48 hours?
A lot of the conversation has been, how can we get better? We are looking at doing some pretty explosive work around unconscious bias training for all of our stores, for all of our executives, everyone in our home office in Seattle. We are also looking at all guidelines that we have around these kinds of issues. This is an instance where the police should never have been called, and we are keenly aware of that.
So, I went to this location, the 18th and Spruce Street location, on Saturday, and spoke with the store manager. I believe her name is Holly. And it became my understanding that this case that took place on last Thursday was not an isolated incident, that it is the routine practice of that store manager to call the police when someone is violating the, quote, excessive loitering policy, and so much so that she doesn't feel she needs to call to tell the persons in advance that she's calling the police. Is that a policy? Is that how they're supposed to deal with it? Because she pointed me to the sign that says no excessive loitering. And when I asked what the practice is and how you enforce that, she was ambiguous, to say the least. So what is supposed to be the policy when someone violates it?
So you mentioned a very important word. There is, as we're learning and looking at this carefully, the guidelines are very ambiguous.
Okay.
And that is uncomfortable for a lot of us. And so we have some cleanup to do in that respect, because there's too much ambiguity and leaves much to variability.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, it's 9:27. Good morning. We're talking with the COO of Starbucks, Rosalind Brewer. She said I can call her Roz. And she's joined us today to talk about the controversial arrest at the 18th and Spruce Street location and how the multi-billion-dollar company is responding. I want to go back to how this policy is supposed to be enforced. If someone is violating the excessive loitering policy, what is supposed to be the policy and the practice that the manager follows next, if it's not to call the police?
Right. So in this instance, the police were engaged prematurely, and so it should be a course of last resort, and it's one of the things that we're evaluating. This is going to take some time for us to understand what happened, figure out a plan of correction for it, and really think about what should happen here. We're in a different place in time.
Yeah.
And we've got to contemporize the work that we're doing.
So one of the things that have come up and that we've been talking about this morning and that I've talked about over the weekend, because I had, in preparing for this conversation just on the show, I talked to one of my best friends who goes to Starbucks quite often. He lives in Center City. And just last month, he had the police called on him at a Starbucks location. 2 officers showed up because he was just sitting there typing and had not purchased anything. So is the opinion at the corporate office that this was an isolated incident, or have you guys come to the realization that maybe this is happening in multiple locations at multiple stores, and it took this one to kind of crystallize that this is happening?
Yeah, and that's part of the investigation, is to look not only in the Philadelphia area, but to look around the country and look at this thing on a national level. We have 23,000 stores. Half of those are in the U.S. So when I tell you that, there's investigative research and trying to seek to understand and know what we can do better, this is going to be expansive.
Yeah. I have to imagine with that many stores, it's hard to think about or hard to execute quality control, but particularly on the level where you're talking about excessive loitering, mainly because of the fact that the word excessive is subjective.
That's right. That's right. And, in this situation, it would seem easy to just blame that one person, but there's a lot involved here. And I will tell you, first and foremost, we take responsibility for that. We own these guidelines. We own these buildings, and we develop our managers and our leaders. So first and foremost, this is a mirror up to ourselves to figure out what's going on.
How do you personally feel? Are you disappointed in the company? Not just this store manager, but do you feel disappointment? Do you feel confusion? Do you feel angered?
Bad things happen to good companies. It's how they respond to it. And I am part of the process of responding to it. I'm happy that I'm here. I've been with the company for just 6 months.
Right.
And
Joined September.
Yes, exactly. So I'm very happy that I'm here, and I am very proud of how my company is responding to this.
Is this the biggest type of PR issue that you've had to deal with since joining in September?
Absolutely.
Welcome to the company.
Yeah, so this is like a little baptism by fire.
Absolutely. It's like, wake up. Here you go.
So your personal reflections, personally preparing for this types of conversations, knowing that you're going to be engaging some communities that are going to be hostile and cynical from the jump. How are you personally preparing for this moment?
Well, actually, it was actually natural for me because the empathy is, is gut-wrenching for me because, I live it in my life as an African-American female, and I worry about my son, just in general, just because of his demographic, African-American male. So, I'm happy that I'm engaged. I'm happy that I'll be part of the solution and maybe give this thing fuller insight and the best insight that this company can do. And the commitment that I've seen from the company, second to none.
Now, prior to this incident, how does the corporation talk about racial discrimination, diversity, class? How does that conversation materialize in the C-suite and then in the 23,000 stores?
It's absolutely the reason why I joined this company, because they have those conversations very openly, honestly. It's a reflection in every part of the company. When you think about the way we address situations like, our Opportunity Youth Program, where we're trying to take 100,000 individuals between the ages of 18 and 24 that are not in college, not employed, and give them their first job, and then begin to talk to them about education. That's why I am with this company. That's why, I think we're going to be best in class at this, because we have these conversations. It is part of the mission of this company. It's everything that we do, and that's why I'm here.
Are there any best practices at the corporate office that tell you how to respond to this, or is this really you're learning as you go, or there's so much uniqueness to this incident?
I will tell you, this company, it's embedded in their culture. So, to say that we have to be deliberate, I will tell you that naturally walking down the hall, you feel good about being a Starbucks partner. It's just naturally in the DNA. It's the way the company was built. Howard Schultz started it based on, creating a third place where people can come and, enjoy a great cup of coffee and create community and conversations.
If you're just joining us, good morning. It's 9:33. We're talking with Starbucks COO Rosalind Brewer about the controversial arrest at the 18th and Spruce Street location and how the multi-billion-dollar company is responding. I'm glad that you brought up culture, because I think that was another one of the things we talked about today. It seemed that this incident was incongruous to what the culture is. The culture that I understand of Starbucks is, as you just laid it out, this is a place where you can come and hang. We have free Wi-Fi. You can write your screenplays. You can have your job interviews. And most people don't think about loitering when they go to Starbucks. They think that is part of the culture. And so for a lot of people, I mean, there's the argument where people are saying, well, the men should have just gotten up. They should have, they shouldn't have escalated that. And I think there is some truth to that too. But I think they also was thinking about, wait, but this is the Starbucks culture,
Exactly.
right? This is the culture that invites me to be here.
Yeah, that's what makes this so difficult. This is when, guidelines, policies, and procedures get sideways with your culture. And this is when you've got to take a really good look at yourself and say, what am I actually doing every day? And what is it I want to live out every day? And we have to do a better job of bringing those two things closer together. We have to look at ourselves again. We were built on that, but every now and then you just got to lift your head and figure out, have I gotten away from my culture? And in this one, we're learning about, what our partners face in stores every day, what gives them the right tools to deal with any situation, and then how do we guide them through the best leadership moment.
So I'm sure that there has to be a lot more talking and conversations before you decipher what policy will be what.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your initial reaction, how do you think that this event is going to inform the policy? Because Melissa Robbins, to your right, or I should say to your left, she said that, if the black men hadn't gotten up, if they had not sat down and stayed there, we would not be having this conversation with Starbucks. Starbucks would not be addressing this internal policy. So I guess two-part question. Do you think that it was important for them to have sat down there so that this issue could come to a rise? And what's your initial reaction in terms of thinking about the policy?
So quite honestly, personally, I'm proud of the way they handle themselves. I'm very proud of that. I mean, it was a proudful moment for me. While first I initially looked at the video, and then I was like, wow, this is how you want this to work. I'm looking forward to meeting the two gentlemen. Hopefully that'll happen while I'm here.
Okay.
We're working hard on that. I think they've agreed so far to meet with us likely later today.
Okay.
That would be a great conversation.
Just to interrupt, the two men who were arrested will be meeting with just you or the C-suite that's here?
Myself and probably our leader, Kevin Johnson, the CEO.
Okay.
We'd like to have a small conversation, private conversation. We want to get to know these individuals. No media.
Okay.
No media. We just want to get to know these two individuals, understand how we can get better. They're going to tell us more than we can learn on any sheets of paper, right? Just by making that connection with them. And then just talk about the path forward.
What's your expectation and what you will hear from them? And what's the message you want to relate to them?
First of all, I want to make sure that they know I personally apologize for what happened. And if we do nothing else but to let them leave that room knowing that we are sorry. Secondly, I'd like to understand from them, can they help us learn more? Is it about the Philadelphia area that we need to understand, their experiences when they're in a Starbucks store? And then also, too, a little bit about their life's journey. What's important to them? What community issues are they facing so we can help support those as well? Yeah.
It's interesting about the Philadelphia area because as I understand it, this policy that was enforced at the 18th and Spruce Street location, this no excessive loitering, I understood it from the manager that this is a hyper-local policy, that it was passed in corporate, but it only impacts Center City locations and some adjacent to University City. Is there any truth to that, or do the store managers have autonomy to kind of create some policy?
Yeah, so I think therein lies the ambiguity that I talked about earlier, is that the guidelines can be misinterpreted and interpreted in many different ways. And so I just say that to say, we've got to get around what works for the broader perspective and make sure we're giving our leaders in the store the right tools that they need.
So two more questions I have for you, and then I'll open it up. The security guards. Some people were saying that taxpayers' dollars should not be used to be responding to Starbucks trespassing calls. That if they're going to have this policy of no excessive loitering, then they should invest in security guards who can handle that themselves rather than calling police. What do you think about that? Is that a conversation? Is that something you've thought about?
I'll be honest with you. I have not thought about that. Because what I do think about is our relationships with local police forces all across the country. And they want to partner with us. We help them in other entities in the community. And so it's a natural partnership that we've developed, like more recently than not. And, it's just we've got a relationship there.
But the idea of having security guards to enforce your own policy rather than calling on the police, do you think that's a valid argument? That taxpayers are saying, I don't want my officers responding to trespassing calls at a Starbucks.
Yeah. I'll just have to tell you that, we tried to develop something a little bit different in our buildings. And I think a security guard is not, the experience, just as you just mentioned, that we want to have in our stores.
But if that's the only going to, if it's not security guards, it's going to be the police, isn't it?
You know, the police shouldn't have been called in this instance.
Okay.
And so, you know, I think it's more of a rarity than it is a norm to have the police there. You hire security guards, that's 24/7.
Okay.
That's not what we want.
Last question is, people have been calling and saying that the person who called the police, Holly, the store manager, if that is who it is, that she should be fired. Is that something that you agree with? Is that something that is in the works, or is that something that you can't necessarily address?
You know, we're investigating this thing fully. We want to understand more. It's great to be here on the ground to talk to other partners that were in the store at the same time.
Okay. Did you guys, Ike Raw?
That was my question right there.
Yeah.
You already know.
Okay.
I do have an additional question. Thank you so much for coming in and addressing this immediately.
Thanks,
Will
Melissa.
you guys take a look at any existing data out there across the nation that would reflect that police calls of 911 calls result in black people being arrested? Will you look at that?
You know, I believe that might be one of the things we look at. I mean, we're going to go far and broad on this to understand what's next and how do we get these guidelines in place, and that might be something that we will surface and need to take a look at.
One last question. Will you guys incorporate, or do you currently have any kind of implicit bias training with your new onboarding employees?
So let me talk a little bit about that, because we are planning some pretty expansive unconscious bias training. We will do that with all field partners, and we will do that at our home office with our executive team. We hope to install that over the next 90 days, but we're already putting that into works.
Does it?
Sure.
Well, no, I just want to ask this because our police commissioner here is on record as saying he doesn't feel his police officers were in the wrong. How do you feel as far as the police officers?
You know, we have a good relationship with the police officers here, and it's hard for me to speak on, their intentions. They were called and they responded.
Right. And
So-
that's what I take out of it because of what Ross said. They called and they responded to a call. That's how I feel.
Right, exactly. Had that been flipped, it would have been, unfortunate. So, yeah.
Have you talked with the police commissioner yet?
I personally have not, but our CEO, Kevin Johnson, has talked with the police commissioner over the weekend. I hope to see him face-to-face also while I'm here.
So you have a busy time here in Philadelphia.
I do.
Are you going to have any time to just enjoy the city while you're here, or are you just here on work?
Not this go-round. Not this go-round. But I love Philadelphia, so I'll be back for sure.
And have you visited the 18th Street location yet, or is that also?
I will be there.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point, I'd love to get over there.
Morale. How do you boost morale of the employees right now, particularly at that location who are coming to work and they're being protested as they walk into the doors, they're being yelled at? How do they continue to deliver the quality Starbucks experience that you want them to deliver under all of this? Like, what's the message to the employees?
You know what? This is what you got to love about our company. Our partners are so jazzed up right now.
Really?
They want to come. They want to put the green apron on. They were in the store this morning. They're excited to be there. They feel proud about the company they work for because they know of everything that we do to support our partners, and they're willing to help.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those points in time. It's a teachable moment. It's a moment to re-inspire the organization and be self-reflective.
Well, Rosalind Brewer, Roz,
Yes.
I really appreciate you coming to Wake Up With WURD today and visiting our city. I think that at the very least we're heartened by the quick response from Starbucks and the fact that it's not just statements or interns, but the C-suite.
Yes.
Flying from Seattle to Philadelphia to try and
Absolutely.
handle some of this on the ground. And so I appreciate you and the company for doing so.
Well, thank you for having me.
Is there anything that you wanted to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you?
No, I mean, I just, I'm impressed with, all of the relationships and discussions we've been able to have in the city so far. And I just look forward to you all, working with us and helping us solve the situation.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the Starbucks COO Rosalind Brewer. And she joined us today to talk about the controversial arrest at the 18th and Spruce Street location and how the multi-billion-dollar company is responding. You're listening to Wake Up With WURD on 96.1 FM and 900 AM.